All right. Can begin by thanking everyone for waking up early, a little extra early today for this second Sunday Dharma series talk. And especially James, our guest, who is joining us from California. So it really feels like, what, 7 o'clock in the morning there instead of 8. Yeah. So we really appreciate that. So welcome everyone. I am Trisha Stotler with the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, D.C. And you are here for our second Sunday Dharma series, which happens on the second Sunday of every month in 2021, where we bring in a different teacher who is either in conversation with one of our teachers at IMCW or gives a talk on a specific topic and then takes your questions. And this series is an important fundraiser for IMCW that helps to support our general operating fund. So thank you also for your generosity in making donations to be here today. And also welcoming Miyako Villanueva, who is doing our sign language. There, she signs her name. I know that. I recognize that. Okay, so James, welcome. Thank you so much. Some of you know that James is pinch hitting for Frank Ostaseski, who was scheduled to be with us, but has lightened his speaking engagements due to some additional rest he needs as a result of his stroke that he had last year. And so James, those are pretty big shoes to fill in the death-related world, right? Some people said, is he going to be speaking about joy? And I said, in a roundabout kind of way, maybe, but I actually thought about you immediately because I had remembered listening to one of your talks from last May that was called Loss, Grief, Death, and Impermanence in Pandemic Times. And I listened to it on Dharma Seed, so you all can find it on Dharma Seed as well. So last May, we were headed into, it's sort of when we all realized that this thing was real and that we were going to be in it for a while. And I personally had found the Dharma to be so helpful as a guidepost through the uncertainty that this past year has brought and continues to bring. And coincidentally, in that talk, you kind of based it off of the 5 remembrances, which was another topic that I had in mind to talk to Frank about. So you are in the right place at the right time, and we're all going to receive the benefit of some of James's wisdom. So, yeah, James, do you want to list those 5 remembrances? I didn't tell you this in advance, so I'm asking you to at 7 a.m. to dig deep off the top of your head, but there's different translations of them, and I wondered if there's one that you particularly like.
I just can share with you off the top of my head, and in my heart I have said them many times, so we'll see how it comes out right now. This body will grow old. I am not above aging. This body will become sick. I am not above sickness. This body will die. I am not above death. Everyone and everything near and dear to me, I will be separated from. And I am the owner of my karma. My happiness and unhappiness depends upon my actions, habits, and choices I include, not on my wishes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So these remembrances are something that the Buddha instructed us to reflect on regularly, as
Every
a
day.
mean, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, as a
Mm.
means of practicing letting go, I guess. And I wondered, when I first heard these, I was in my 20s,
Mm.
and they meant something different to me then than they do now. I just turned 50.
Mm.
So in those intervening 30 years, and I'm wondering
Mm.
if the same thing might have happened to you, like if you can recall when you first heard them or started to practice with them, and if that's changed for you over the years.
Mm. Um, I heard them early on in my practice. And I first got into the practice and the teachings in 1974. So I was 27 then. And they're a mind stopper, like, oh my goodness, here's the facts of life. And I think the one that hit me the most early on in those early years was the one about loss, that everyone and everything near and dear to me I would be separated from. And I'd often reflected, actually it was early on in my practice that I reflected that um, how many best friends we've had in our life. It actually came to me on my first 3-month retreat. Now that I'm thinking about it, which was the first retreat at IMS in 1976. And there was somebody on the retreat that I felt a connection with, and enjoyed seeing them when they were there. And one day their zafu and their zabuton was gone. That can happen on a retreat. Life happens, and all of a sudden there was an empty space. And the thought, what happened to them? Oh my goodness, we didn't get a chance to say goodbye. And it was, and there was nothing you can do in silence, right? So it took me a little while. Oh, they're gone and my life is going on, and I'll, in a couple of days somebody else will take their spot. And it made me think of all the best friends, my best friend from childhood, who now I'm back together with, being best friends after about 40 years. We speak almost every week, so that was an interesting journey. But that best friend and this best friend and this best friend, and how many best friends have we had that we thought I could never go on if I was parted from my best friend. And it
Mhm.
started me thinking how people touch us deeply, and then we lose them, and there's some grieving and sorrow, and life goes on.
Mhm.
So that was the first one that really struck me. The other ones, when I was in my 20s, hey, I'm going to be around for a long time. But friends and others have died, and this is reminding me things I haven't thought about for years. In my when I was in high school, um, a boy in our class who was a star athlete um, slipped and fell in the bathroom and died. And
Mm.
that was probably, I still think about him. And that was probably the first encounter with, oh my goodness, even young people can die. But didn't stay with me as a continuing kind of a thing, more like a concept. But then, of course, as one grows older and there are more and more deaths, younger and older people and all ages, um, it gradually, the truth of it became a lived experience rather than just a concept. And the Buddha says, as perhaps you know, in his teaching on the elephant footprint, that greater than all other contemplations is the contemplation of death. And he says, don't think about this every day or every hour, but he says, think about it every breath. That can be a kind of heavy way to go through your life, but there's a kind of freedom when you really take it on. Oh, this moment is precious, so let's not miss it. So over the years, that has been a practice of mine, to know that at any moment, as Joseph Goldstein says, anything can happen at any time. That's been a long-standing instruction, personal instruction in my own practice. So that's how it's kept going.
Thank you. So in some ways I found that to be true as well. I do, thinking about these contemplations, it starts off as kind of like, geez, that's kind of heavy. That's a bummer. But the more I got into it and made it part of my daily contemplations, maybe not in a formal way, but just in noticing the impermanence of things, including the things I hold dear, I did find a freedom in that. I can remember when my son, who's now 16 and sleeping upstairs, he must have been around 2.5, because he had just gotten out of the crib and into a toddler bed. Because I can remember it was on the floor, and I remember sitting on the side of the bed and he was asleep, and just looking at him for the first time and thinking, wow, like, you're not me. Like, you're you, and I don't even know you. And yet you're so dear to me. And look at how much you've changed. And then just my mind just started to move forward in time, that I don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen to your life. I don't know anything about you. And where there had been like a real clinging to this parenting role and everything, I felt this, like, of course, sadness, but infused with like spaciousness around, I don't have to be in charge of this human being. It was kind of like a lesson in letting go. Of course, it didn't last very long, and then I was back to bossing him around and doing all those things. But I still come back to that contemplation, as I now have 3 kids, and they're all growing up and flapping their wings at the end of the branch, and I'm getting ready. So that impermanence piece. And go ahead.
It's interesting. You just reminded me just this week, somebody who's very close to me. She's like a daughter, and she lives in Australia, and she's pregnant with her second child, and she just sent me the ultrasound and of a little video clip, a 5-second video clip of this being just coming into existence, and you can see the spine, you can see the hands moving and all. And my first thought, I texted her back and I said, wow, that's so amazing. And then I hope it wasn't too morbid, but I said, what a journey she'll be on. In a little while, she'll be a baby girl, and then a young adult, and then an old woman. And I just saw her whole journey of this, over the course of the next, hopefully 90 or plus years.
Right.
In my mind, oh, there it is, the inevitable, mysterious journey. So it was interesting. That's the first thing that came to me, and so that's how my mind works. It's like all on this journey, all the time. This is This is just one moment in a finite number of moments in your life. Let's be here for it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, um, I mean, the Buddha must have had in mind that we should do this so that we get used to reality. Because, and I mean, he didn't even know it was all the things that would come about to distract us in 2021, right, from reality, like the myriad ways we have of not being in touch with the truth, you know, all the stuff about how to make your face look young again, and like we can, it's everywhere. The advertise all these things we can do to not age, and yeah, we do ourselves a disservice, I think, when we don't come back to the reality of this, because then something like the pandemic hits and we think, wow, this wasn't supposed to happen. Uh, I know Jack Cornfield was our speaker a couple of months ago. He came in to talk to us, and he dropped a few truth bombs on us about, well, what did you think was going to happen in your lifetime? You know, I think we were expecting like a warm pandemic hug, and you know, which of course I think you feel like you come away with whenever you speak to someone like you or him anyway. But the truth is really like what kind of sets you free, when it comes to the just the nature of reality.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, yeah. That reminds me of, can you tell the Ajahn Chah story about the broken cup?
Definitely. I was there maybe he said it many times, but I was there when he said it with Jack around and with a number of us. This is in 1977 when a number of us went with Jack and Joseph, and Ramdas was there, and number it was right after I finished my first 3-month retreat, and I went on my first Asian experience, and we visited Ajahn Chah in Wat Pah Nanachat in Thailand, and he had a real joyful demeanor while teaching these deep teachings. And somebody asked him, "Well, could you explain the Dharma in simple ways?" And he looked around and he said, "Well, it's like this. It's like this cup. You see this cup? My cup that says Namaste on it." Um, he says, "I like this cup. It was given with a lot of love. It holds my water. It's aesthetically pleasing, and I love using it. If I can see this cup as already broken and then go ahead and use it, this is what the teaching is about. This cup will break sooner or later. And if I know that, then I can use it and appreciate it while it's here and not cry and be shocked at the loss." He says, this is what the teachings are. Everything is changing. And so appreciate it while it's here, and knowing that impermanence will win out in the end over everything. It was a
Yeah,
powerful teaching. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Sort of like me looking at my son, like, this baby will grow up. This baby
Mhm.
will get old. This baby will get sick. Um, so before I continue, I want to let everyone know that if you have questions for James or me, but I'm imagining most of them might be for James, you can put them in the chat. There is an ask questions here box. It's a person behind that box, but ask questions here, and then we will have some time at the end for questions. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. So thank you. So speaking of impermanence, uh, it's really difficult to. It's interesting how we can know the truth and the reality of this in uh, in our our practice when we're sitting in meditation or on a longer retreat, and we're really paying attention to this moment to moment arising and falling away. And then off the cushion, how our habit pattern is to get kind of snapped back into the day-to-day stuff that most of us are doing, like our householder lives. And if the teaching is to learn how to surrender to the ups and downs in life, how do we do this practically? I think that's one of the follow-up questions I had for you is, are there things in your own life that help you to kind of come to grips with this truth of impermanence along with the other marks of existence? You know, how does that one stand out, or the three of them go together?
I think over time with practice, it becomes the lens with which one sees the world. And that's been true of me. The Buddha in one discourse that I love, the Megillah Sutta, where he speaks to this new practitioner, and he says, if you're going to contemplate, if you're going to remember one thing to contemplate, remember impermanence. And it's kind of like remembering death in every moment. But it's really how I see the world, that no matter how wonderful this moment is, it's going to change. No matter how awful this moment is, it's going to change. And I think I'm not alone in saying that after you practice, when you're practicing, you're sitting there on the cushion and you're seeing in one sitting how many different thoughts you've had, or how many different sensations you've had, or how many different moods you have in the course of a day. And especially in that crucible of watching so subtly and carefully over days and days on retreat, it starts to sink in on both that wider level. Oh, so many thoughts I've had in the last hour or so, but even on a subtler level, where instead of an in-breath being, it's many, 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 many moments that comprise one in-breath. Things start to dissolve, and it stops being a conceptual idea,
Right.
and more a lived experience. You start seeing, you start seeing things like under a microscope, where you put a drop of pond water and you see there's a whole world in there, and then you look at an electron microscope, which I've never done, but and you see molecules and atoms. And once you see that for yourself, and if you've seen it in a number of times, and you've seen it in a deep way, you start seeing this is just one band on the spectrum of consciousness. Yeah. And so that is how I often view the world. Yeah. And I tell people when they're going through hard stuff, that inevitably that is what life will offer us. You will laugh again, you will smile again, you will get on with your life, as hard as it is. This is part of your curriculum, as Ram Dass says, for you to integrate. And no matter how wonderful, I don't want to bring people down when they're in the midst of a fantastic moment, but knowing there will be tears again. So the way I often share the teachings is that rather than thinking of arriving at some pinnacle moment, pinnacle place where now you figured out life, oh, I finally got my life together and it's clear sailing, that instead of trying to arrive somewhere, see yourself as being here for the ride, and every moment counts.
Mhm.
And that's deep, that can be deep within us as we see. So that is how I see
Yeah.
life in an ongoing way.
Yeah. Thank you. And so as we find ourselves in these pandemic times, and the last year has had a lot of social, racial upheaval. It's just, we've been through a lot collectively. And we do see how things are come and go and come and go. And I think for a lot of people, I don't know if this will show up in the questions or not, but I'll put it out there, that I've spoken to, there seems to be, there's like an edge with accepting things the way they are, the truth of things the way they are, and wanting to act to change things for the better. And knowing how to navigate that edge, is a big part of a lot of people's practice right now. Um, and I am not asking you what you think because I think you might have the perfect answer, but it's good.
Good.
It's interesting to know how individuals who have practiced for a long time navigate that themselves. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that, just from your own
Uh,
experience.
yeah, sure. This is as perhaps I care deeply about our world and want to do everything I can to make this a better world. Um, Climate is a big issue for me, and I see the possibilities on all sides that this can be a great wake-up call that humanity has never had before, a tremendous opportunity for awakening, as suffering usually is, or we could be headed over the cliff to the point of no return. So what to do with that, and with any major catastrophe looking at us, and all we can do is what we can do. So for me, the basic serenity prayer is the guide. Grant me the courage to change the things I can, the serenity to accept the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. But it's not my place to take away the suffering that I can't affect. And it's not my place even to save the world all by myself. It is my place and my conviction to do what I can from love, from caring, from a spirit of contribution in whatever way I can, from an open-heartedness that can address the suffering that I can address. And that in itself becomes contagious, rather than
Yeah.
doing it out of fear or despair or a sense of resignation or hopelessness. Oh, here's what I can do. And I'm sure we've all been inspired by others who work that from that place, whether it's Greta Thunberg or the Dalai Lama or Tara Brach or whoever. You do it out of love, and that in itself is inspiring, contagious, and ennobling. And you do it with a sense of equanimity as well, as I'm sure most everyone watching is quite familiar with the image of Kuan Yin with her in her royal or relaxed posture, with her leg crossed, and there she is hearing the cries of the world, but being centered in her action, ready to leap, and at the same time having equipoise. This is our task, to bring equanimity to that compassion, so our heart doesn't get broken, or it gets broken open into
Mhm.
action. I think
Mhm.
that's the task for all of us.
Yeah, yeah. I sometimes say when I'm teaching that the the practice for me helps to hone like an inner compass, so that when something arises, I have a better idea of how to respond, like you're saying, out of a place of caring instead of fear, or equanimity instead of being wrapped around the axle and just trying to fix everything. So it's like kind of a constant honing or re-aiming
Mhm.
um, back to uh, yeah, what's most important. So I
A-
think that's really helpful. It's a practical, you know, like you're saying, it's a practical use of the practice when we get off the cushion.
Yeah, and it's so much more effective. I often use the example, if you're going through a hard time and somebody who really cares about you is saying, "Oh, this is so terrible. Oh, this is tearing me apart. What can we do to change things?" How does that feel?
Right.
Then you got to take care of them, and you are better off just being with yourself. But if somebody is there who just says, "Oh, I want you to know I'm right here with you. I love you, and we can I can be a support for you," but they're not trying to take away your pain.
Mm, mhm.
There's the healing, just in holding hands together. And there are studies that show, if somebody is going through physical or emotional distress, if they can hold another person's hand, or if they feel another person is there, then their threshold of dysregulation
Yeah.
is much lower, and so we just are there for each other.
Yeah.
That's where the healing is.
And thinking about the degree of equanimity that that friend must have in order to be there, just with presence instead of that fixing anxious energy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, we practice for ourselves so that we can be there for others. It's sort of like that
Yeah.
rippling out effect. But yeah, it's not an easy task to be in the face of such suffering and stay in a way that feels equanimous. Equanimous. Um, I want to, this is related, but in a slightly different direction. And I hate when people do this to me, but I'm going to do it to you. I have a quote. This is what you said in May of
Oh,
2020.
oh, good. I'm all
All
ears.
right. I always go, oh no, what did I say?
Uh-oh.
But I think this will be a softball. You said, as part of that talk, grieving happens in community.
Mm.
It was a communal process until recently. And I think that for context, you were kind of talking about, well, certainly when we're socially and physically distanced, we don't always have the ability to grieve together anyway, practically. But even before that, I think just sociologically, we've gotten away from communal grieving. And I thought that was so important that I kind of like highlighted that we're not meant to be separate in this grieving process. And if you could say a little more about that.
Yeah, just like I was just saying, when you're holding somebody's hand, it makes such a difference. And there's something about the container that we're all in this together. You know, one of the things about suffering is that it deepens our compassion. When we go through our own suffering, we see the human experience. But when we collectively are going through it together, it's a profound sharing of this basic fact of life, where there are people in the community who have that wisdom, like Thich Nhat Hanh says, you know, his famous teaching on the boat people who were escaping from Vietnam. If there was one calm person in the boat, those were the boats that made that treacherous journey. So when we're communally holding the pain, there's an energy field of many wise beings who are there to help us remember and hold, like we've been doing it, you know, probably since the beginning of time. When we go to a funeral, or we go to a memorial service, or we have some kind of a ritual of marking some major sorrow or sadness, you know, that's, you know, Veterans Day or Memorial Day, you know, those things are there to help us all remember this is part of life. And I'm sure we've all been to memorial services where, you know, people are, there's tears shed, and there's also a celebration of that person's life. And somehow our collective energy field can help us hold the tears and open to the joys and celebrations. And I think that's one, as far as when somebody is passing, when there's a death, it's just as important to celebrate their life as it is to shed the tears. And so doing it together makes that so much easier. There's something very profound about feeling that connection and knowing we're not alone. You know, that's the great pain, when we feel alone and nobody can understand what we're going through, or we're alone and people can't help us hold the pain. We are social beings that need that connection, and it's how we're wired up for all of our mirror neurons to be firing together and saying, oh yes, I'm with you, we're all here together holding this sorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I just think back over the last year of not really being able to do that. I mean, I haven't been to a Zoom funeral, but I'm guessing it's not the same. Um, and just, I'm wondering, I'm hoping that there are celebrations of life left and right when we're able to be with each other again, to just kind of be able to communally process some of that collective grief. And it was also, I think, really touching that that it wasn't this recent thing that the president did, but it was a couple months ago, where they were on the National Mall and they lit the candles and they were
Yeah.
standing out there. It was really beautiful to just have like a national acknowledgement, since we can't be together. And I was just, you know, I haven't lost anyone to COVID. I've had some people who've been very sick, but for those who have lost people, I just could almost feel like some relief that this is, you know, being acknowledged, that this has
Yeah.
happened to us.
Yeah, I've been to a few Zoom memorial services. Just one a couple of weeks ago, when my dear friend Sylvia Borstein's husband of 60 years passed, and it was beautiful. In some ways, the one of the silver linings of Zoom is that people from all over the world can remember and celebrate, and oh yes, there was that, and oh, and wasn't he great in that, and so can you imagine going through this without Zoom, or without
Mm.
being connected? This, if this would, I've thought of this a number of times. If this would have happened 30 or 40 years ago, this pandemic, and people were really alone and isolated without being able to see each other, what a different experience it would
Yeah.
be. Um,
Or even I mean, there's been pandemics before,
yeah,
like what did, it's sort of like what Jack was talking about when he said, what did you think was going to happen? That your whole generation, your whole life, there wouldn't be a pandemic? Or, what did the people in 1918 do? Um, I don't know that they had the guidelines to socially distance that we did, but I'm sure they wore masks, and I bet they knew not to get together. So I
and
think that was a lonely time.
actually, in doing a little bit of research on that, there was a whole mask, not mask issue in those times too. It was quite amazing to see. Don't tell us what to do.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, it's
but
that saying, there's nothing new under the sun.
mm,
There's nothing new under the sun.
but much lonelier, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. The other pandemic in the country and the world is loneliness too. So that's like another piece that I think about when contem- contemplating these five remembrances, like for me, for everyone else. I mentioned offline that I sometimes host death cafes.
Yes,
And
I want to hear.
yeah, yeah. Well, um, they're actually, have you ever been to one?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Okay. So, well, most people are joining us from all over the country, and this is actually an international thing. I think it's deathcafe.com or .org or something. You can find one near you. But um, yeah, they are events that anyone can go to. They're open to the public. There's no agenda. There's a container for the facilitator, kind of hold the container of, no one's an expert, respectfulness, there's confidentiality, all of those regular kind of group sharing containers. But it started off with a man, I think his name is John Underwood, who has since passed away, in England, because he sensed that there were no outlets to talk about death. It was a taboo topic, and he didn't think it should be. So he started inviting people over to his house, to talk about anything death related. And the only prerequisite is that you serve tea and cake,
Mhm.
so that's loosened. It can be any kind of food, but you have to serve food, because that's like the bringing together, and the helps people to relax and everything. So they're quite interesting affairs. I haven't done one virtually, so although they are happening virtually, but I would have a waiting list for this thing, because young and old, I mean, from people in their 20s to 80s were my oldest age, and they're not so much a group, a place for people in active grief, because the questions are unpredictable and could be
Mhm.
triggering to someone, but it's really for the death curious. And all kinds of topics come up, and from what do you think happens to you after you die? We have a pretty international community where I am, different death and grief practices, um, from people from different countries. I'm not drawn to the more mundane questions about living wills and all of that, but that's a big question. But I do get those. But also, like, what do you think about ghosts? Or do you
Mm.
think your relatives can talk to you? What, do you believe in reincarnation? And people from all different walks of life. And there's a vibe of like coming in and you get in your group and it's sort of like, no one knows I'm here because like I didn't want to tell anyone that I'm coming to this because people think it's weird. But you get in there and it's like the least weird thing you've ever been to. It's like people who are ready to talk about the facts of life, and really moving stuff, and kind of spin-offs to write your own obituary, and just helping to keep this focus on death. I realized before I got on that someone gifted this to me. I don't know if it's backward, and it's in French, but you can see that it's a skeleton, right? And
Yeah.
he's holding a bow and arrow, and it says, "My arrow, I assure you, uh, no one escapes. You will dance to the ballet that I sing." And it's a memento mori, from like Roman times. Seneca wrote this or something,
Um,
and it kind of it's larger than I might have liked it to be. It sits on my desk, to just, yeah, no one escapes this arrow. Um, and I don't know. I think that if you are death curious, that it can be a wonderful way to come into community with other people that are kind of on this path. There's no experts, although sometimes hospice people come to process their own stuff. But yeah.
mm, how fantastic. Yeah. So I'm curious how it's impacted or broadened you going to the cafes.
Yeah. Well, I think that being with people at different stages of life, and I started off by saying, when I was 20, the remembrances meant something really different to me. And especially the growing old and becoming sick. Since I've been 20, between 20 and 50, I've, had children, I've had cancer, I've
Mm,
been diagnosed with a degenerative condition.
mm,
So this getting sick bit,
mm,
that's real. And so to be in community with people who are further down who are older than me,
mhm,
basically, um, I love just seeing life through other people's lens,
mm,
and like what becomes more important. I know we're not all the same, but like what does get more poignant as we get older and sicker, and
mhm,
we lose more people
mm,
in our lives,
mm,
especially peers. Uh, it's parents are expected to go before us usually, but peers, that's a difficult one. So someone at a death cafe saying, "I'm the only one left
mm,
in my peer group,"
mm,
and it's really wild to try to hold that.
mm.
Um, Something that I can't really relate to. So yeah, I think that's what the main thing I've gotten out of that is to just a deepening of compassion for the stages of life, that we all go through.
Yeah. That sounds really
Yeah.
powerful and
I
connecting.
Yeah. So I noticed that we're coming in on question time.
Mm,
Um, so I'm gonna see. Yeah, we have some questions here. And if they're hard ones, I'm gonna give them to you. So there's no name listed on this one, but these teachings and meditations are so helpful for the grief and loss we face as a family. Early death of a parent, loss in quotes of a mother suffering from Alzheimer's, and my own many hospitalizations managing a long-term illness. These are the normal and inevitable losses: illness, aging, death, and grief. Can you talk about the intersection with what Pauline Boss calls ambiguous loss or unresolvable loss? Our daughter was recently diagnosed with schizophrenia. She is here. she's not the same person she was a year ago.
Mm.
Here, but not here. And these teachings often feel short shrift for the loss and grief with each of us and every day for the rest of our lifetimes.
Mm.
Yeah.
I wish we could have the person on to talk, and I'd be interested to hear how they're handling it. Wow, that's a big loss that I'm just taking in. How to handle it.
I like how what she called it an ambiguous or unresolvable loss.
Yeah. Well, this being has their journey, and I'm sure that the person has loved them through through the whole journey up until this, and now it's the next step in their opening their heart to this reality, and just continuing to love them and helping them hold their pain and confusion. It's the next step in the heart opening with love, because I would imagine that's the greatest gift that they can still give their child, is to just keep on loving them no matter what, and letting the heart break, but letting it break open. And just like with the self-compassion practice that, I know you're going to have Kristen Neff on in the future, where you acknowledge, oh, this is really hard. This is so painful. This is suffering. This is part of life. And I would imagine and hope that she is connecting with others who are going through or have gone through what she's going through, parents as well as the children. I'm not alone in this, and finding the support of others who are going through, and let me hold this with kindness and compassion, and see what lessons there are for me in this life. And it's the next step in letting go and opening to a deeper love, without the blame, without any self-judgment, without any idea that why did this happen to me? Because those kinds of questions just create more and more pain and confusion. Okay, this is what life is asking of me now. How can I meet it? How can I deepen my understanding for all beings who've gone through what I'm going through now? And as often is the case, when people go through a deep kind of dukkha, a deep kind of suffering, their heart breaks, and it breaks open to a deeper place of understanding and love than was possible before. So I hope the questioner can see that as part of their task and transformation.
Thank you. Same. And as a parent, just kind of reading that, feeling the fear arise. And just, yeah, like you said, bringing the compassion to that. And this notion of impermanence can feel, like you said, short shrift when in this moment it's difficult. But yeah, trying to kind of sink into that, the truth of impermanence, that we never know exactly how it's going to play out. And bringing the, like you said, that open-heartedness to this moment. Thank you, James.
Mhm.
Thank you for that questioner.
Yes.
Let's see, our next question from Bo. I lost my mother last week. I'm grieving her loss. I'm viewing the world through a lens of impermanence. How can you do that without getting habituated to feelings and emotions? I'm viewing the world through a lens of impermanence, but how can you do that without getting habituated to feelings and emotions?
Well, I think the grieving process is one of the most important things that we can learn and continually um, get more and more familiar with, because as that fourth remembrance goes, everything near and dear to us we will be separated from. And so first, not to think or even hold the thought that I will be stuck here for forever, that this is a process to be honored, all feeling all the feelings, feeling all the grieving, and knowing that this is part of life and that this will deepen ourselves. I can share from my own experience in losing a parent. Both of my parents are gone, but my father died at an early age. He was 66, and he was somebody very special in my life. In my book, he's the first dedication to Arnold Baraz, who taught me how to love. And he had this amazing heart that just loved to love. And I think I got a little bit of that transmission from him. But it's he was the original source for me. And when he died, and it's different. There's different kinds of deaths also. He had cancer, so there was a process and time to say goodbye that's different than somebody who dies quickly. And each one has their own challenges, because then you see somebody suffering as opposed to going quickly and not suffering for a long time. But there's a shock in that. But when my dad passed, there were many, many tears. And the tears were before, more tears before actually than after. By the time he did pass, there were still plenty of tears for the next weeks and and on through the next months, but much less so. But what happened was, as I think I said earlier, there was a kind of integration of who he was and how he lives through me. And I find that a very helpful understanding of the process. When we go, what lives beyond us? All the good that we've done in this world, all the ways that we've touched others, and through them our good deeds live on. And so it became this process of integration and celebration, and a kind of merging, so that he was in me and still is in me. I got his picture right over there around the corner. And when I see my dad in my mind, I'm hearing him say, "I love you, boy." And that's the transmission. And there's not, yeah, there are those scenes at the end, those last moments, and I was with him when he passed, which is a very fortunate thing to do, and I was with my mom too when she passed. But that kind of seeing, this is a process of opening to all the feelings, giving space for them, really making space in these weeks and months passing, and it happens in waves and cycles. It's not like, oh, I'm finished now, and but it still can hit, but you're more and more in a process of as I said, deep integration, and honoring. The best way to honor that person, that loved one, is to reflect on all the beautiful things that you receive from them, and let them live through you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bo. Sorry for your loss. Yeah. I found that when my mother passed away first and my dad a few years later, that I've lived in the town where I lived for 15 years or so, but people I had never met, or were friends of friends whose paths I would cross would come up and say, "I heard you lost your mother. I lost my mother too."
Mhm.
And it was almost like joining a new club.
Mhm.
Um, it's like you don't understand certain things until you're there. You can contemplate the loss of a parent, but when it happens, um, it's different. And there's a new community of people who understand that suffering. And I found that to be really, really poignant. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
club keeps on getting bigger and bigger the
yeah,
longer you live.
yeah,
um, and then you just see, this is part of life.
mhm,
This is not some mistake of how could this happen.
right,
This is the process.
yeah, yeah,
And my
yeah. Thank
heart goes out to Bo as well. Yeah.
So our next question is from Brian. Brian says, "Are we asked nothing else but to live the abundant, full, and engaged life despite the awareness of impermanence?" And I thought that was an interesting way to phrase it. I don't know. The despite part, I don't
Yeah.
know. I think that's not really despite impermanence. It's impermanence allows you to live an abundant, full, and engaged life.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, James, I'll pass that to you.
No, yeah, I completely agree. That is the deal. Um, Actually, as I was talking, as I was thinking about this, um, I thought of a poem that I love, that I was able to pull up on my phone, that addresses this question, if it's okay to read it.
Yeah, please.
It's by Jennifer Wellwood. Um, oh, sorry, I got I did the wrong one. Just let me get it here. It's uh, uh, Dakini. It's called The Dakini Speaks. And she says, "My friends, let's grow up. Let's stop pretending we don't know the deal here. Or if we truly haven't noticed, let's wake up and notice. Look, everything that can be lost will be lost. It's simple. How could we have missed it for so long? Let's grieve our losses fully, like ripe human beings, but please, let's not be so shocked by them. Let's not act so betrayed, as though life had broken her secret promise for us, to us. Impermanence is life's only promise to us, and she keeps it with ruthless impeccability. To a child, she seems cruel, but she is only wild, and her compassion exquisitely precise, brilliantly penetrating, luminous with truth. She strips away the unreal to show us the real. This is the true ride. Let's give ourselves to it. Let's stop making deals for a safe passage. There isn't one anyway, and the cost is too high. We are not children anymore. The true human adult gives everything to what cannot be lost. Let's dance the wild dance of no hope. The Dakini Speaks by Jennifer Wellwood. I love that poem. Let's not miss it. Let's know what the deal is here. This is the deal. This is part of the whole process, and it's not a mistake. And when you can really open to that, there's no bargaining with life. There's no way you're going to win that bargain. Surrender into the mystery of it.
Can you read the last couple lines of that poem again? Do you still have it up?
Sure.
Something about the dance of no hope.
Yeah. This is the true ride. Let's give ourselves to it. Let's stop making deals for a safe passage. There isn't one anyway, and the cost is too high. We're not children anymore. The true human adult gives everything for what cannot be lost. Let's dance the wild dance of no hope.
Feels so freeing to me.
That's exactly it. That's why the Buddha said, hey, let's wake up. This is what the deal is here.
It reminds me of a poster one of my kids has in their room, that it's like a great expanse, landscape, and it says, relax, nothing's under control.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's like, for the control freaks like me in the world, right? It's that's a gift. Relax, nothing's under control anyway.
I love it. Beautiful. That is, this is all about letting go of the control that we never had in the first place. That's what we're doing when we sit down and we see this crazy mind going everywhere, and we see all the feelings coming and going, and we've been meditating for 30 years and say, oh my God, I can't believe, yes, it's all just life happening through me. And we learn to let go. That's the third noble truth. That's what freedom is about.
Yeah. Thank you. I wonder, as we come perilously close to the end of our time, I feel like we could go on. You might need some breakfast, but I could go on and on, or a nap. If you could lead us in a little meditation. And before that, I want to read just a comment from Charles Lee, who suggests that we dedicate the merit of this practice time to Frank Ostaseski and all beings suffering and recovering from illness. And I can't think of a better way to incorporate that into the end of our time together. So
yeah,
you lead us for just a few minutes.
Sure. And I want to, I'm so glad he said that. Frank and I did were part of the Heavenly Messengers program for 2 years. We looked with about 100 people at old age, sickness, and death, and it was a profound exploration. And I have such respect and love for him. So yeah, let me see if I get my bell around here so I can end it properly like a good meditation teacher should. So might just let your eyes gently close and first reflecting on those 5 remembrances. This body, if we're fortunate enough, will grow old. I'm not beyond aging. This body will become sick. I'm not beyond illness. This body will die. I am not beyond death. Everything and everyone near and dear to me, I will be separated from. I'm the owner of my karma, and my happiness and unhappiness depends on my actions and my habits and my choices, not on my wishes. And with that in mind, we can open up to the human experience of illness and aging and death and loss. And right now, reflecting on everyone who's going through one of those, and especially a special metta in Frank Ostaseski's direction for all the good that he has done and does in this world. May you feel our love and appreciation. And for all those who are going through illness right now, may you come to whatever healing is meant for your journey. And all those who are going through the dying process, may you be holding it with acceptance and peace as you let go. And all those who've lost loved ones recently, may you process your grieving in a way that honors their memory and their gifts to you in the world. And may we all continue to use these facts of life to deepen our understanding and our compassion of the human experience, so that we can show up that much more fully for life with joy, with gratitude, with compassion, with love. May our coming here together be of benefit to ourselves and everyone in our life, and ripple out to be of benefit to all beings everywhere, human, non-human, and including this beautiful planet Earth.
Thank you so much, James, and everyone who's with us today and those who will be viewing the recording. It's like you're here with us. So thank you again for your generosity in your donations to the Second Sunday Dharma series. And we hope to see you next month for Rhonda McGee or Kristen Neff. And James hopes to see you on March 28th at his day long, which will be sent in the follow-up after the video is prepared, that our managers will send that out to everyone who's registered. So that will be coming shortly. James, so
Pleasure.
nice to be with you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Same
I
here.
hope our paths cross again soon, to you and everyone here, and that you have a great rest of your day wherever you are.
Me
Thank you
too.
so much, everyone.
Thank you, Trisha. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.